she is the one, the only, Sarah Bils. Sarah Bils is an independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. I was just telling the audience how great that is. I always pay attention to that stuff when it pops up on Twitter, and I always appreciate the commentary in it. How you doing, Sarah? You doing all right today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Good morning. I know it's early for you. You are in, well, it's not sunny California.
No, I'm in rainy Washington.
Oh, you're in Washington. That's right. You're in Washington State. That's right. You're in Seattle, Washington.
Mhm.
Have you guys been able to see like the smoke or anything like that?
Not yet, but we will. We get it
Okay.
all every year, so we will see the smoke. It settles on us. Usually, we'll see it.
It's like it settles on us. It's like that
Mhm.
damn California.
Mhm.
Do you any ideas? I mean, you're closer to it than I am. What happened? I mean, like I know California gets wildfires pretty much every year, but you would think that if they get wildfires every year, they will be more prepared for it.
I'm really not super well versed in the deforestation methods and whatnot, but what people are talking about now is that there was a siphoning of resources away from the city, not just by Gavin Newsom, but by the mayor. I believe it's a female of Los Angeles,
Mhm. Right.
and she was on a trip to Ghana while this was going on. So it's like it's kind of more of this indication that there's this class strata, that we're so stratified, and that it's just these people that live these lives, and then the rest of us that they don't care about, these useless eaters. It's just kind of more proof of that. What happened with the fires, I don't think that they have any clue how any of them started, though there is some video evidence that some are being started by people, but there's none of the major ones have been proven or suggested that they were arson related. But they are expanding. I think that I slept for a few hours last night. I'm trying to pay pretty close attention just because we have people there. But I slept for a few hours last night. By the time I woke up, I mean, none of the fires are contained at all. They were all reset to zero before I fell asleep last night. But I think 2 more popped up while I was sleeping. So it's still windy there. It's still very unpredictable. There's firefighters. The equipment's lacking. The manpower is lacking. Water is lacking. It's just a recipe for disaster.
Democratic-led city or country.
I think the only solace in this is that because so many elites and people that are higher upper class will be affected, is that this may get some significant attention, but who knows?
No, the wild part is this is a rich area. I mean, I remember one of the videos, the guy was like, that's $1 million house that just went up in flames.
Mhm.
I mean, just astonishing.
Even the smaller ones.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, this is effectively a rich area that is falling apart. So I wanted to get your take. I was telling the audience. Oh, yeah. So I was telling the audience that they are talking, Ukraine is talking about having elections in 2025. Well, this year, we're in 2025. Sometime potentially in May. And that Zelensky, who was going to run again, I don't think his wife wants that, but whatever. I think he's planning on running again in this election because right now he's illegitimate. He's basically a dictator of Ukraine. That there was threats against Zaluzhnyi, that if Zaluzhnyi comes back, because he's been exiled to the UK as a political rival, that if he comes back, that Zelensky's concerned that A, he can win it because Zelensky has lost a lot of political credibility over the course of this war, and B, that there are threats to Zaluzhnyi that if you come back, we will press criminal charges on you if you run in this election. Basically, we do like Joe Biden did with Trump. If you run, there will be consequences. If you don't run, we will bring you into the administration. But just be aware, we may prosecute you if you indeed run against me because you have a better chance of potentially winning the race. I guess, one, have you heard that? And two, what are your thoughts about it?
I hadn't heard of that exact scenario, but Zaluzhny's always been a very close second choice, if not even first choice for a president over Zelensky. He was discussed very early on, and his increase in popularity is what resulted in his sort of severance package with his ambassadorship or whatever he's doing in the UK and Britain. So that was that kind of like get him out of the way, but not like not be like awful about it or obvious about it. Zaluzhnyi is wildly more popular than Zelensky and Slutsky, with the new armed forces chief of the armed forces, but he's wildly way more popular. So I guess Zelensky would be concerned, but Yelena, I believe her name is, if I remember correctly, we call her all kinds of other names. Maria Antoinetskaya is what I usually call her, but she doesn't want him to run. I think she's ready to be done and to go off into the sunset. So we'll see who wins out this one. I feel like she wears the pants in that relationship, though.
Do you?
He doesn't wear any pants. He plays the piano without pants. So,
well, they're going to be very rich. Which is to play the piano without pants. Look, that's a skill. It is a very difficult thing to play, play piano with your penis. And just like, ding, 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 the keys.
Really, I really want my president to be able to do that. We're really missing out.
He's just not on OnlyFans. I mean, he would make a ton of money. Not as much.
Make more money. Probably make more money on OnlyFans than laundering money for the Bidens.
I don't know, man. What, $200 billion? Yes. Even if you take $1 billion, nobody's going to know it. And she's dressing pretty nice. I imagine there are cars and houses in Miami that we don't know about. So the way I got this from, so right here, Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky could press criminal charges against former commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Valery Zaluzhnyi, should he wish to return to the presidency, Kiev-based Telegraph reported on Wednesday. Zelensky has refused to hold elections to leave after he canceled the vote on May 2024, calling the conflict basically martial law. This is according to the Telegraph. Zelensky has already decided to run in the next election, with the earliest possible date being May 2025. The timing depends on the developments in the conflict and whether the president, Donald Trump, manages to mediate. Quote, with a trust rating of 52%, Zelensky has a chance to win, the Telegraph noted. However, Zelensky's chances plunges if Zaluzhnyi who is currently Kiev's ambassador to the UK, is on the ballot and enters the race. Hence, the issue that Zelensky has with it. I agree with you, especially after the Kursk incursion. I was talking to Mark Slobody yesterday, and he pointed out that the Kursk incursion has been so bad, and he keeps doubling down on it. So it's like you have an attack, the attack gets beat back. You have another attack, it gets beat back. And you're using your best people to continuously push in an area that has no military significance at all. And it seems that the only plan is we hold on to it. So when Donald Trump negotiates a deal, that we'll trade this land for their land, for our land. It's not working that way. And it seems like it's turning into this kind of fire bag where these people are not just contained, but they're just being slaughtered. Give me your take on this. I mean, it doesn't seem to be going well. I mean, I was right down. Karavo has fallen. Teres has fallen. Petrovsk, is being encircled as we speak. The Donbass, at this point, was able to celebrate New Year's without bombs falling on them because Russia has been able to push Ukraine back that far to the west. This is not going all that well. Even the Washington Post came out with that article talking about how bad this conflict has been for Ukraine, even acknowledging that 400,000 people as a low number is either dead or wounded. I would argue they're just dead. Give me your take on all of this. I mean, there's still, in fact, just to piggyback on this real quick, Washington Post, I'm throwing a light at you at once, I'm sorry. Washington Post came out with the article, Ukraine risks losing the war, a Trump-imposed bad deal would be even worse. Yeah, meaning it would be worse for Trump to make a deal as opposed to allow Ukraine to just fundamentally collapse on the battlefield. That's astonishing.
Yeah.
Give me a take on all this. I throw a lot at you.
They don't care. They'll ride it out as long as Trump doesn't get the win. It's to the last Ukrainian. And, even Trump's peace deal has been backed off 24. It was supposed to be 24 hours after election. Then it was 24 hours after inauguration. Now it's 100 days after inauguration. Maybe. So we got a lot of maybes now. We might get a presidential election. We might get a peace plan. And the problem with Kursk is the only news you're going to get out of Kursk, unless you really dig, and even myself, I find myself having to dig for it, is from the West. You don't know
Right.
what's going on in there. And the West is using what sources? They're using the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian armed forces. I mean, even
Mhm.
as recent as this morning, well, this morning for us, but this afternoon for them, Zelensky doubled down again and said Kursk has been a huge success. The Russian MOD is saying, well, we're saying 50,000 soldiers have died
Yeah,
in there,
right.
most likely. And that's our low number. And so nobody's going to acknowledge the news that I'm watching video footage of these guys getting blown up. The guys that are
I know.
surrendering are saying, the one I posted, I think it was on New Year's or right after. He said Apti Abludinov from Chechnya. He said, is there a message that you want to send to your comrades? And they said, if you can, surrender.
I saw
Surrender
that.
now. And they even said, shoot the commanders and surrender. That's how
Wow.
bleak things are in the Kursk direction. So it's really like we're watching like Nero, literally, like in the United States. We have Biden being Nero and we have Zelensky as the whole thing is just burning around him, just saying, this is fine. Kursk is a huge success. And all of the stories from the ground are saying different. I don't know what the method is to the madness that, like the WAPO, I think it was WAPO, the headline that you just read, this whole,
Mhm.
it's better to just let them lose and fall flat on their face and than it is to let Trump come in and give them a deal.
Which is
That
outrageous.
tells me that they
Yeah.
want this to be a frozen conflict, that they want some sort of armistice, something that they can warm up later if they get a Democrat administration that's conducive to rekindling this war,
Which they're not going to get. They're not going to get it. They can't, like,
But
I don't know how they can get that. And the reason I say that is, they've had the Minsk agreements 1 and 2. They've had Istanbul agreements. They've seen the U.S. pull out of the JCPOA, all of the deals that were made during the Reagan era, meaning the moment that we get sick of a deal, we just pull out. So there's no continuity in regards to the deals that you make and the deals that are going to be kept. Even this notion of we're not going to move an inch to the east. Okay, all of that stuff has been violated. So from the standpoint of any rational actor, they can see Syria and they can see what happened in Syria where that frozen conflict just popped up at a time that was inconvenient for the Syrian government. Russia has had to do a heavy lift. I mean, even if Ukrainians lost 1 million people, let's say it was 500,000. Okay, Russia might have lost 100,000 themselves. That's a heavy lift. So I can't see them allowing this conflict to freeze and then resume sometime later, as opposed to we're going to do this now. We've built up a 1 million man military. Our industries are pumping out weapons and drones and everything. We're going to do this now. So I don't. I mean, do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
When I was in Russia, that was kind of like a big topic that I wanted to ask people about their feelings on the war, their feelings on Putin. The general consensus from military and civilians alike was we want the whole thing.
Yeah.
We don't want Ukraine as a government. We don't want the Ukrainian government to exist anymore as an entity. And even people were suggesting, now this is just scuttlebutt or rumors, but they were suggesting that if Putin were to accept a peace plan that didn't placate the military generals, they would keep going on their own and it would be literally a military coup mutiny.
Wow.
And so they are not interested in negotiating with Zelensky right now. They want Odessa. So I'm not sure. I think that Russia has been very much in control at this point. I think they've lost a little bit of the upper hand just because of what happened in Syria.
Mhm.
But I still think that they're in the driver's seat of all of this for sure.
Definitely in Ukraine. Syria agreed. Syria was just an outright disaster. It's like just shocking. And now you have the situation of Hezbollah being kicked out. You have Lebanon and a presidential election that is taking place today. I had Laith on.
While you've been live, it's finished. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was talking to Laith. The General Joseph Anoun, I believe, ends up winning. And as Laith was pointing out, a military general wasn't even supposed to be able to run, let alone win. Laith was not in a great mood.
He won.
He was not in a great mood. Yeah. I mean, his concern is that Lebanese military is going to turn around and go after Hezbollah. And he was even pointing, oh, please.
That's part of his platform. Yeah. So for sure.
which is astonishing.
Mhm.
Like Leif was saying that he was in conversation, like they were in conversation with Hezbollah in order to try to get assurances. But at this point, it seems to be pretty clear that this is U.S. and Saudi control of that government. Give me your take on that. I mean, we've kind of fallen on this topic. If you have a take,
I do. Well, I don't have a take, but he did just win. I don't really know a ton about him, so I'm going to dig into him today because he did win. But exactly what you said, he's the U.S./Saudi backed candidate. The U.S. had to make sure that they got their candidate in there before, obviously, an Arab candidate, but more so a French or Russian backed candidate or a French or Russian friendly candidate. So he has won. He will he's promised to adhere to the kind of that sort of ceasefire disarmament of Hezbollah and the upping of the Lebanese military. So we're going to see basically what has happened in both Syria and Lebanon is the same exact situation, just in different versions, pretty much. The core political leadership in Lebanon has always been in turmoil. They've been a political deadlock for 2 years because of the United States. And then Syria has been overthrown. So we have these two new regimes, governments, whatever, that are basically being molded by the Western interests. Like HTS doesn't know how to run a government. So who's going to teach them? The West. This military guy, he doesn't really know how to run a government. So it'll be the West, and he'll be receiving aid or whatever, and he'll be placated, and he'll just be another lackey. This is just more American imperialism by another form, just quieter imperialism.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can call it quiet. I mean, Lebanon has been bombed to, smithereens. I mean, the exploding pagers, the slaughtering. I mean, they killed thousands. And that's not even before, like leaving the Gaza part, where they killed nearly 100,000 people, depending upon the Lancet study that was doing analysis. This has been extraordinarily bloody. And strangely enough, I've been shocked at the way the world has just stood by as this has taken place and normalized it. Like you're seeing babies freeze and the world just keeps on going like nothing is happening. It's very strange. It's very bizarre. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know how to frame that. Like I wouldn't have thought that my government would have been okay with that. And yet my government was okay with it, and not just was okay with it, paid for it.
I fear, and I'm pretty black-pilled about it. I've been getting worse, so you could stop me if I get too black-pill your audience too much. But I mean, they have conditioned us to watch a genocide for 16 months, and basically said, we're going to do this, and you can't do anything about it. You could scream, you could shout, you could do all you want. In fact, we want you to do that. Keep yourselves busy with all that crap talking about it, because we're going to do what we want anyway. And we became desensitized to it. And now we said, we watched them wipe out a population. We were forced to. It wasn't because we couldn't. It wasn't because we wanted that to happen. We were forced to. We were helpless. And now we know that if we couldn't stop something that we saw that was the most monstrous, violent, and horrible example of humanity, we couldn't stop that, and nobody in our governments were willing to stop that. That tells us that there's nothing that we can do ever again. That's it. We've passed the Rubicon. What happens next when they go for the next population? What do we say? Well, they wouldn't do anything for the Palestinians. Well, why would we waste our breath? Not even that. You've alienated a lot of the Arabs, so it's like it's crazy. And it's very bleak to me. It's very, very bleak. After watching what we've watched after the last 16 months, because you're a political analyst, we watch some very horrible things that the public usually doesn't see. This round has been completely different. The public has seen everything. And I think that in the end is going to be a net negative, because they've already seen it all. Nothing after Palestine will shock me. And I thought I saw almost everything in Ukraine. And after Palestine, nothing you show me ever again will shock me, I don't think, in the terms of war.
The Ukraine thing, the only reason the Ukraine thing got me was because it seemed so ridiculous. Like, it was such a ludicrous conflict. And what I mean by that is, it's a conflict that never needed to take place. You had agreements in place. Russia didn't necessarily want a war, and yet they kept pushing and pushing and pushing. in regards to we got to get NATO, even though everybody knew it was a red line. And it's like, this is ridiculous. But at the very least, it was a war. It was two sides that have a military that are going at each other, where it's like, this is the test of strength that these guys are going to do. Okay, fair enough. I get it. It's horrific. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to lose their life over this nonsense. But at the very least, it's a military's going at it. This was attacks on the civilian population. Like, it wasn't like they had tanks. It wasn't like they had ATVs. This was a civilian population that when they would score victory, it was usually them running and putting a bomb on a tank and running away. Like, that is different to me. Seeing somebody blow up hospitals is different to me. Seeing people like go into rooms and shoot a person in a hospital bed, it's just astonishing. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And then,
served a purpose. Ukraine desensitizes us to boots on the ground. That's just desensitizing us to trench style World War II warfare, World War I and World War II warfare, which is very likely that we could see more of that. So that did serve a purpose. But I do agree, because it's been horrifying watching Palestine.
Have you been paying attention to some of the stuff that's been taking place in Europe? I was like either in Armenia, either in Azerbaijan. These kind of there seems to be this agitation towards. I'm sorry. It seems to be this kind of agitation towards Armenia and another conflict. What's going on in this? I've only obliquely saw it.
This one's a really complicated one, Armenia, Azerbaijan. It doesn't make a lot of sense right now, because with Russia kind of backing away from their very strong relationship with Armenia, it kind of left both of them in the lurch, because now Azerbaijan was like, can I make a move to kind of ingratiate myself with Russia? But we also have to remember, Azerbaijan is part of a trifecta, a very strong triad that is Israel, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. Armenia is backed by France, which is an adversary of Israel, and even more so right now because of what happened in Lebanon. So right. Armenia and Azerbaijan has become a completely different hotspot than it was prior. Prior, it was Turkey can leverage Azerbaijan, or NATO can leverage Azerbaijan to piss off Russia via Armenia. Now it's not like that anymore. It's become a completely different battleground. Armenia has panicked. I think that they will probably be leaving CSTO completely. And this morning, they voted to go forward with creating the application to join the EU, which is just, I can't imagine. Yes, just while you were live. Everything's happening while you're live. Thursday's usually not a big news day.
Because Pashinyan, I was shocked that he regained power. I mean, like, for one, you pop off and you get your country involved into a war that you just get crushed in. I mean, like, they got crushed as an understatement in the Garden of Karabakh. And then you complain about Russia not helping you out, despite the fact that you were leaning closer and closer to Europe or America. And yet you're like, oh, you're not helping us. You're not helping us. And now they're pulling a drama queen and saying, okay, now we're going to go to the EU. Okay, fair enough. I mean, for one, do you disagree with anything I just said there? Because I could be wrong. And two, I mean, give me a take on that. I'm shocked by that. Like,
they just treat the whole former Soviet Union like these kindergarten children. They're like, put whoever in charge, we'll instruct you as we go. Armenia is in full-on panic mode. They don't know what to do. They're literally jumping on the Titanic, as the iceberg's in sight. That's what a bad position Armenia is in right now. That should show you the sort of desperation. And Azerbaijan is going full throttle now. They know that they're backed fully by Turkey, who just made a huge power play in West Asia. So they're thinking, we've got the big dudes behind us. Israel's won their war for all intents and purposes, and Turkey just overthrew Assad. So Azerbaijan's the big kid on the block over there. There are the other people surrounding them are Georgia, who's in a little bit of political turmoil, but holding their own with a friendship with Russia. Azerbaijan is creating problems with Russia because of the plane crash, or maybe just using it for such. And Iran has been sent home with its tail tucked between its legs by Israel, by Azerbaijan's big brother. So Azerbaijan feels very emboldened right now. They want the corridor and they want it open. And they said it will be open in 2025, whether Armenia likes it or not. And that's why Armenia is desperate to get into these Western alliances.
Armenia can't stop them.
No
I
way.
mean, it's already been demonstrated militarily that they can't.
There will be no Russian peacekeepers. So
yeah, I agree with you. They can't stop them. I mean, if they want, I guess, are we looking at an era of military expansionism? Is that what we're seeing? I mean, when Donald Trump talked about Greenland, like I said, Israel has expanded into Syria, Turkey has expanded into Syria, even Ukraine, by the way. I mean, the Yanukovych government was overthrown. That wasn't this kind of democratic order. That was an overthrow of a government also. South Korea was an attempted overthrow of a government. This is not normal. I mean, even Georgia, where they were trying to overthrow the Georgian government, it's just so happened the prime minister didn't do it. Romania.
It's only been like 6 months. This is like a 6-month window.
That's my point, right? It's like that's a lot of territorial expansion where countries are like, and maybe you're right, they've gotten in their mindset that it normalized. Like, hey, Israel did it. Hey, this country did it. Turkey did it. Why can't we do it?
100%.
I'm curious on your take. So Israel, there was reporting out that Israel started to get worried that their security was at risk. And the reason had to do with, for one, Turkey, because now they're, their borders with the invasion of Syria, and even Syria itself, with this notion that Turkey is backing the jihadists in Syria. And so there's a certain amount of, let's say, overt control that Turkey has now in that region that is on the Israeli border, and that they were apparently concerned about it. Now, let's put aside the fact that they expanded their border when they took over parts of Syria. So this is a problem of their own making on some level. But are they right that at any point, for one, the jihadists are multiple groups, any of those groups at some point could do something different, especially if they're not putting their weapons down in the way that they want them to? And that, they may have a tacit okay in agreement with Israel now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that agreement would last, because ultimately Israel is going to be an enemy. What's your thought on this?
An article did come out recently. I'm not familiar with this council, but some council inside of the Knesset advised Netanyahu that Turkey and Israel would be going to war in the near future, and Israel needs to prepare for such. What they're going to war over, I don't know. What they probably are mostly want to rearm themselves, but they have security concerns. They have valid security concerns, whether you agree with Israel or not, which I don't, but they are valid security concerns. And there are hundreds of groups of quote unquote jihadists in there. Who's working for who's affiliated for who? This can change on a weekly basis. So things can change, and that's a worry for Israel. And Israel doesn't have a hold on these guys like they did with the actual ISIS, not to be hyperbolic, but Israel was in pretty good contact with ISIS when they were operating in Syria.
That's not hyperbolic. I can show you article after article on that. It's flat fact true.
They had great comms and they had a good relations. They don't have that same kind of relation with HTS as of yet. I think that they're kind of waiting a little bit for the West to kind of make their move as well. So the United States is pushing other people to normalize with HTS, and I think Israel will come later. But yes, these groups are completely unpredictable. Look at the history of just Jolani alone. He's gone from group to group to group and a rename somewhere in there. So yeah, things can change on the turn of a dime. And I dislike Israel. I'll keep saying it again. I'm obviously not pro-Israel, but they have shown their military fortitude and they have shown their military prowess, especially against Hezbollah. And so,
they've shown that come on, Hezbollah, if it had a $20 billion budget, airplanes, tanks, nuclear weapons, the U.S. and Western powers backing it would be a pretty formidable military themselves.
But they don't. That's just the fact.
But they don't have those things, right? It's like it's a resistance group. No, I agree with you. Those alliances can change at any point. I mean, like you said, what's his name? Jelani was in al-Nusra. He was in ISIS. He was in Al Qaeda. I mean, he's this kind of alphabet soup of groups. So I agree with you. But it's a problem of their own making. I mean, also, Istanbul is a country of what, 100 million, give or take? And
Uh,
Israel is a country of 8 million.
Turkey's
And they're,
huge.
yeah, Turkey is huge. And
Huge.
this is not a war that Israel should be fighting
No,
or could even possibly win. Like, it's one
no.
thing if you're going after Lebanon. Lebanon doesn't have,
But this
this
is
kind of
where
heavy
things get
military.
they're going to get so interesting and really hairy when these sort of Western Eastern alliances don't line up in all of these conflicts. You get to Turkey. Is Israel really going to attack a NATO member? And it's like, oh wow, because Israel's not a NATO member. Oh my God,
Exactly.
this sort of elementary geopolitics doesn't apply here. The situation can get super out of control. But I think that Israel's been kind of itching to argue with Turkey for a while, at least. Maybe not militarily, but at least open some sort of political or diplomatic front. I think they're actually more interested in the Sinai than they are in the more
Any
land in
kind of
Syria.
conflict with Turkey. Yeah. I got to get your take before I let you go on Trump's threats for Canada and for Greenland. What do you think is coming out of this? I mean, I think on some level, it may go to this idea that we were talking about before, this kind of age of expansionism, where this kind of normal order has broken down. And I agree with Margaret Kimberly on this. I blame Europe for this nonsense. I mean, yeah, you can say the US, but all things being equal, yes, we invaded Iraq, we invaded Afghanistan, but Europe just stood there and didn't say anything about it. And more to the point, when Ukraine was overthrown, again, Europe thought it was great. They thought it was a revolution of dignity. And so it's like you've had these countries change over in Europe in a non-constitutional way that Europe stood by and was perfectly okay with, even with Georgia and even, as you pointed out, with Romania. And now Trump is like, hey, Denmark, you've been a vassal for us for all of these years. Why don't we just take Greenland off your hands? You don't need it. Or, hey, Europe, I know you're paying 2% for NATO. Let's make that 5%. Why not? Hell, you're buying U.S. weapons anyway with that 5%. Let's make that 5% or else. Like, this is mob stuff.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, we're taking advantage of Europe, fair enough, but we don't typically rub it in their face. Somebody called it the century of humiliation.
It is.
And I think the title works. Where do you think Trump is doing with this? I mean, do you think this is just Trump shit talking, or do you think
I think there's a
there's a
point
method
to
to
it.
the madness?
Shows that we have Europe by the neck, by the throat. Okay, like you said, you're going to pay 5% for NATO, not 2. You're going to do this. You are our vassal. We're going to take this off your hands. What was the other one? Oh, 50%
We're gonna blow up
of
NATO.
the LNG now comes from the United States, upcharged.
Yeah.
And they said today, we're looking to increase that. What's the shortest route from DC to Moscow? It's through the Arctic Circle. So that's where the next sort of battleground is. Not to mention that Greenland has a ton of mineral wealth and a very low population density that's not going to put up a fight. So there's a lot of things that they want Greenland for, a lot of nefarious things they want Greenland for, but it's also a race, part of the race to the Arctic. So I think there's some truth to it. I also think that what he's doing by going really big, by saying, we'll go invade Panama, we'll make Canada the 51st state, is he's opening the door for the dialogue for revanchism and imperialism to take place. It doesn't necessarily have to be Canada. That's kind of like a joke or whatever. But we've, like you said, we've watched Israel invade 2 countries and really didn't say much about a breaking of sovereign borders. Russia annexed Crimea via referendum and then did it again with the Donbass. So there's a lot of things that are happening in terms of changes in borders and changes in territory. And I think that Trump kind of just blew open the dam and was like, let's talk about it. Like, if we're really going to talk about it. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, I don't know, but it's getting a lot of world leaders in a tizzy, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they're kind of like, okay, this is something that we need to look at. Like, poor President Scheinbaum, she just took over and she's about to lose her golf. Like, she literally just got inaugurated. That poor girl. She's had to deal with anti-Semitism all year. Now she's got to deal with this.
So I agree with you. It's like opening the conversation, right? And I agree with you with the Canada thing where he's mocking Justin Trudeau. I mean, he talked about Trudeau like a dog. He talked about Canada like a dog. Oh, we don't need anything from them. They're sending over their drugs and their migrants and blah, 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 blah. Well, there's that part. And he was like, we don't need their stuff. I want to sanction the hell out of them if they don't allow themselves to be annexed. And then even with the Denmark thing, if you don't give me this, I'm going to sanction the hell out of you. Like, that's some pretty astonishing stuff. I also agree with you about its resources, right? Greenland, or let's say Denmark, is already part of NATO.
Mhm.
So why would you need to annex it if indeed it was just about being a part of the territory? No, he wants the resources of that territory, and he wants this kind of position on the Arctic. I agree with you on that one too. I guess the final question is, do you think he's going to be able to get that? I mean, there's an argument of what can they do about it, one way or the other. I mean, they've been a vassal for so long. It's not like they have a military that can contest this. So if he takes it, he takes it. They can't do anything about it. They can only complain. But that would be so astonishing. That would like shock the world if he did that. Give me your thoughts, though.
Well, exactly what we talked about this whole episode. This desensitization is we're going to do what we want in front of your face and you can't do anything about it. Trump is going to see if he can take that up to the nth degree, where it's, I'm going to do whatever I want in international politics and you can't do anything about it. And we're going to find out if anybody either can or even would try to do anything about it. You know, this sort of rhetoric and him opening this dialogue is showing that who can do anything about it.
Have you watched it? Have you ever seen Injustice? I don't know if you read comic books.
No.
All right. So Injustice, just as a quick primer, Superman goes insane. Lois Lane gets killed. And he gets killed by the Joker in a way that Superman accidentally kills her because of the Joker venom and all this stuff. Right? So Superman gets pissed off, and Superman says, no more crimes. I, Superman, am going to stop all violence and all crimes around the world. And he goes even to the point of killing, like in this kind of world war, to stop violence, crime, criminals, and everything else. And gets into this fight with Batman. Superman in comic books used to represent the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom and justice. Here's the eagle. He's holding on to the eagle in the comic books. And I do think like art reflects life in some respects, where it's reflecting ourselves back to ourselves. And it's almost like this notion of Superman going insane on some respects. If you think of the US and the way that the US is self-conception, it's kind of that. We're going to be the world's policemen. We're going to do this. And in the process of that, beginning to look very dark in the things that you do. And even in your own self-conception of your own correctness of action and ethics and everything else. I don't know. It puts me in the mind of that, where the country has gone insane on some level. It's fascinating.
I feel like Elon Musk might be a really good personification for America right now. So as Elon descends into madness, that's pretty much the health of the United States.
I don't think he's gone into madness. I think Elon is an oligarch who's only looking out for himself, and he's latched on to political power.
Watch him over a weekend when he tweets 17 tweets in the span of 30 minutes. Like, this is not normal behavior for a billionaire. Like,
can you imagine Jeff Bezos doing that? No, I agree with you.
I don't want to say like anything bad, but he gets messed up and then goes on a tweet spree. And he's like, I can't stop tweeting. And I'm like,
can you imagine Jeff Bezos doing that with the Washington Post?
Could you? He's going to be in charge of one of our government departments. Like, well, he's on ketamine, tweeting 30 times every hour. It's crazy, but it's not. The future is so bright.
It's bizarre. It's so bizarre. Like, it's not shocking that a billionaire will want a newspaper. Like, if you think of Bloomberg, if you think of Jeff Bezos, these people get newspaper because they want, it's like the best way to get good publicity is just buy the paper. Nobody's going to say anything bad about Amazon or Jeff Bezos on the pages of the Washington Post. Twitter is a different animal, but still this kind of conglomeration of media. But it is super weird. It's like Jeff Bezos doesn't put out these like hourly notes in the Washington Post about whatever the hell he's thinking about at the moment, in the way that Elon Musk uses his platform to just pump it to millions and millions, like 1 billion people. It's just weird. Sarah, thank you for joining me. What are you looking at currently in DD geopolitics? What's the next thing that you guys are hitting?
In 4 hours, we will be live with Larry Johnson. That's the next. That's the next thing. I can only go like one day at a time.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
Yeah. So I
Oh,
don't know
he's
what
gonna be great. Larry Johnson is fantastic.
Yep. So we will
But
see you
look,
guys in 2
I
hours.
I thank you for listening.
Thank you so
And
much,
where can they
Jamal.
find you, by the way?
Guys, just go to
Oh, where can people find you?
ddgeopolitics.com. Totally easy. ddgeopolitics.com.
Sarah Bils, she's an independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder, as she said, of DD Geopolitics. Thank you, Sarah. You have a fantastic day. Be safe.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.